Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
You know, our hospital is full.
Hospitals in BC's north
Look at where I am.
overrun and overwhelmed. Also,
I think it's way over the line.
the doors remain locked at one BC school,
We wanted to see the procedures.
trying to keep anti-vax protesters out.
And was it worth it?
He waited nearly 4 hours. Meet the BC student who just may have been the last person to vote in the country.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in BC's north, where COVID-19 is so bad that hospitals are overwhelmed. Patients are being sent to the Lower Mainland and the island for care because beds are running out. As Isabel Regem tells us, there's now big concern around what happens next if this trend continues.
Pushed to the brink.
Our healthcare system is on life support systems right now.
Feeling the pressure of the fourth wave, and it's hitting northern BC the worst.
It's dire. We got to get people out there. We got to get people vaccinated.
Prince George's Hospital is the only one in the region housing COVID patients in ICU. So far, 12 patients, 9 with COVID, have been diverted from Prince George to Nanaimo and Vancouver for care.
The North is being overstretched by COVID-19.
In response, 15 ICU beds in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island are now being dedicated to Northern Health overflow. That region still has the lowest vaccination rate at just 65% with 2 shots.
The consequences of these vaccination rates are clear. We see them in our hospital. They put our healthcare workers and our healthcare system to the test.
This all comes as the region faces a staffing shortage. The health authority says there are only 5 of 20 permanent registered nursing jobs filled on its emergency room rotation. Several nurses and doctors in the north have told the CBC they'll be reprimanded by the health authority if they speak publicly about the crisis. MLA Dan Davies says he too has heard this from healthcare workers speaking to him about their concerns.
Basically, they didn't want to get in trouble for talking to me. So it is a reality, and it's unfortunate.
He says the region's staffing shortage has been an issue for over a decade, but it has been heightened severely now with this crisis, and it's why he's calling for an audit of the health authority. Isabel Regem, CBC News, Vancouver.
And just a few minutes ago, Northern Health issued a statement. It says the health authority does not stop staff from speaking out on public issues, but they cannot represent the health authority or engage in public debate on behalf of the health authority unless they are authorized to do so. The statement goes on to say, we have social media policies that are there to protect our staff and physicians from some of the harmful impacts of social media. If a staff member or physician acts in a manner that breaches Northern Health policies, then we have an obligation to follow up accordingly. And BC's daily COVID-19 cases are on track to stabilizing, but as we just saw, healthcare staff are overwhelmed by the growing number of people in hospital. 525 British Columbians have tested positive since yesterday, and 1 more person has died from the virus, bringing BC's death toll to 1,900. Hospitalizations, though, have been accumulating fast, up 332. More than 150 of those people are in intensive care. 88% of those in ICU are unvaccinated. After factoring in age, the province says unvaccinated people are more than 33 times more likely to be hospitalized than those who received 2 doses. Well, BC is working on a new system for notifying parents of COVID-19 exposures in schools. Dr. Bonnie Henry says she hopes the system is in place by the end of the week. Previously, the province would notify school administrators when a single exposure was confirmed, something officials say created stress for parents. Henry says the new system will be more sustainable and less intrusive. Well, the doors to Salmon Arms Elementary and Middle Schools will stay locked for now. The move comes after a pair of anti-vax protesters entered a school last week. As Susanna De Silva tells us, there's now a debate over whether a tougher response is required.
various laws, and you're going to learn them.
Anti-vaccine protesters were out again in Salmon Arm today.
I support doing what it takes to have this whole program stopped.
We wanted to see the procedures as to how they are going about informing the children.
Last Friday, this same group confronted healthcare workers administering vaccines in a school parking lot. But this group claims they were not the ones responsible for taking their protests right inside some local schools.
I felt that was a gross violation.
This woman's son was in one of the schools. We're protecting her identity as she's worried about being targeted. Luckily, she says her 8-year-old didn't see the protesters.
Because he's autistic, it takes him a little bit of time to process stuff, and he has to vocalize things, and he would bring that up for months on end in order to be able to kind of understand why there were strangers at his school.
The targeting of schools in any way has left many angry.
I think it's way over the line. There's a place and a time and a process for showing your discontent, but schools and hospitals are not the places.
The district says they're going to bring in new security measures, including locking the doors at elementary and middle schools. Healthcare facilities have also been targeted. Now the BC government is considering possible legal measures to create protest-free zones around schools and hospitals.
All options are going to be reviewed. We are working very closely with districts and with that team to ensure that schools are safe. So we're keeping a very close eye on what's happening out there.
Basically, this email was just saying that they were going to be hosting a clinic.
For this mother, locked doors are reassuring, but she worries about a vaccine clinic planned at her son's school tomorrow.
I'm more concerned about him witnessing protesters outside, whether that be just standing around the school or at the windows or whatever.
She says she may keep her son home. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
And the ban on direct flights from India appears to be coming to an end. Commercial traffic is restricted until September 26th, but the federal government will allow 3 flights in on September 22nd as it implements new restrictions. All passengers will be tested for COVID upon arrival. The government continues to recommend Canadians avoid non-essential international travel. Okay, so how long would you wait to vote? An hour, maybe 2? Well, how about this? Some students at UBC stood in line nearly 4 hours last night. They're tired and they're frustrated. So today, our Joel Ballard spoke with Elections Canada about the leg and how things can improve for the future.
At the end of this long line is Andre. He waited more than 3.5 hours to vote in the election, earning himself the title of one of the last Canadians to cast a ballot on Election Day. But was it worth it?
I don't know, it's tough to say. It seems like it was already kind of like decided by the end, but I mean, figured I may as well just go anyway, made it so far.
He had a long night, but he persisted.
I mean, I just feel like you're supposed to. It's like your duty, right? So, democracy, it's how it works.
The only on-campus polling site at UBC was plagued by long lineups throughout the day, snaking through the halls of the school.
It was a little frustrating, and especially hunger-wise, but I don't know, it was frustrating but understandable. They're doing their best.
I personally had to leave the line because I had a class and I wasn't willing to skip my class, so I was in the line for 2 hours, and at that point I had to unfortunately get out.
I missed my class. I opted to, vote instead, but I had to miss a lecture.
That frustration shared by members of the UBC community. On Twitter, UBC President Santa Ono said the extraordinarily long wait times for voting on campus yesterday were deeply disappointing. We must do better to ensure students and the university community have convenient and equitable access to voting.
The lineups, we are extremely sorry for.
Elections Canada says the pandemic made finding appropriate polling spaces difficult, and poll workers did everything they could in challenging circumstances to ensure a safe voting process.
It was highly regrettable, and perhaps there was some way that we could have done it differently to not have it end up in this situation. That is something that will definitely be looked at.
Earlier this year, Elections Canada nixed the popular Vote on Campus program, which saw special advanced polling stations set up on campuses. A petition for its return gained more than 20,000 student signatures. Morant says, again, the pandemic paired with the snap election made it too difficult for the program to continue this year, and it likely added to the increased wait times.
We are completely committed to bringing back the Vote on Campus program, and we're really happy that other people are committed as well. It will be back.
Next election, students are hoping for a smoother process.
Having more polling stations and having like on-campus voting, because there's kids from all over Canada that come here.
Pandemic and snap election permitting. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
For those hoping for change at the federal level, last night's election was likely a disappointment. Parliament is now very much the same as it was after the 2019 election. Let's bring in our Justin McElroy for more on this. Now, Justin, there are several races too close to call, but I want to start with the shakeups here in BC.
Yeah, it's funny, for all the talk of how Parliament didn't change overall seat counts, and that is true, there was a lot of movement in British Columbia, particularly Metro Vancouver, particularly in the suburbs. A lot of places that typically go conservative and went conservative in 2019, but went to other parties this time. Let's take a look at a couple of them. Beginning in Cloverdale, Langley City. This was a rematch of 2019. John Aldag lost his seat then to the Conservative candidate, Tamara Jansen. She was controversial. Her views on conversion therapy attracted a lot of attention. This time around, the Liberals reigned supreme. Let's take a look at the map and another riding that went conservative in the past. That's Port Moody Coquitlam. And again, rematch from 2019. Then Nellie Shin, the Conservative candidate, was able to defeat Benita Zarillo, a Coquitlam councillor. This time, though, it goes against the Conservatives to the NDP. In addition, the Liberals took both of the seats from the Conservatives in Richmond. You know, these are the sort of suburban middle-class ridings that the Conservative Party said they had to win, and they had to build on this election to be competitive. Surely in the postmortems in the days to weeks to come, the reasons why they lost those ridings are going to be a big part of their conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, and what are we still waiting on? Because there are some ridings that are undecided.
Yeah, and if you look at the map right here, there's a couple places where the colors aren't fully filled in. That's because we're waiting on the mail-in ballots. You know, 200,000 British Columbians filled in ballots over mail and sent them to Elections Canada in the weeks and days before the election day itself. So those will be counted up. Those will determine Nanaimo Ladysmith, which is currently led by the NDP, Richmond Centre, currently led by the Liberals. Those, it's a pretty far gap. We don't expect those to change. One that might change is right in the middle of Vancouver, Vancouver-Granville, where if you take a look right there, you do the math, that's 230 vote difference between the Liberal candidate, Talib Nur Mohammed, and the NDP candidate, Anjali Appadurai. Now, over 35,000 votes, that 230 vote difference, so minimal, over 6,000 votes are going to be counted in the days to come. That's not happening yet. They're still verifying that all of those ballots are legitimate and that no one that sent in a mail-in ballot voted on election day itself. But the NDP surely hoping to win a seat in the middle of Vancouver with a climate activist. Talib Nur Mohammed, of course, under controversy for a lot of the campaign for flipping homes. So that's one that people are going to have a lot of passion for in the days to come. But again, we have to wait a few days for BC's election map to be fully filled in.
All right, we'll try to wait. Justin, thank you. With not enough shelter spaces allowing them to live together, homeless couples say they're being forced to make hard decisions. Most shelters, if they have openings, will give them separate spots. And as Balpuri reports, that's left many homeless couples in Metro Vancouver opting to stay outdoors instead of splitting up.
4 nights in a shelter was simply too much.
But is it a place for couples?
Oh, no, hell no.
No, not at all.
Definitely not. I haven't been able to get a good night's sleep, trying to make sure that we are safe, you know.
So now they're prepping to pitch a tent alongside several others.
Oh, the shelter was, it was like something you'd see out of a scary movie.
Couples and advocates readily admit there are few spaces that allow partners to shelter together in dignity.
A couple could come, set up their bed,
They have a curtain that they can pull.
Hours before it opens, this shelter already has 2 couples on a waiting list.
A large majority of shelters in Vancouver still operate with gender segregation. And even in those situations, we have heard, tell of, and find that when heterosexual couples approach those spaces and are willing to take separate beds in separate spaces, they're still turned away.
Couples themselves estimate there are about 100 of them in need of temporary housing in the city.
The pandemic created added stress for homeless couples. Shelter spaces were reduced to accommodate social distancing. Waiting lists got longer. Being together became that much harder.
On any given night, there may be only 8 shelter spots for couples.
We've done research, independent research, calling BC 211, calling every single shelter. We're not seeing that shelter capacity, and we're not seeing space for couples. We actually found that there were no spaces at all today for couples.
BC Housing says it doesn't track how many couples visit shelters nor how many are turned away.
Our goal is really to connect people with permanent, secure, affordable housing. That's where we can best meet the needs of people.
Right now, Vancouver's Crab Park encampment is home to 4 couples. Carrie Bamberger and her husband have been here in a tent for 6 months.
It's better for us to work on it together and have each other than, than to separate and then really have nothing, right?
Being in a relationship, she says, has become the latest barrier to housing.
Why? Because we're temporarily homeless or we're having a slump in our life, we can't have a relationship? That's ridiculous.
It's supposed to go in there like this, too?
A few steps away, Rose and Christian get their tent up just in time before the first storm of the season. Outside together, they say, is better than inside apart.
Is at least here we have our own space. We're safe. Everybody takes care of each other here.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, 5 kittens aren't feeling down in the dumps anymore after being rescued from an East Kootenay landfill. Luckily, workers found the 5 abandoned little kittens in the Fort Steele garbage pile. Local animal rescuer Leslie Long is now nursing the 6-week-old little ones back to health until they can be adopted. And Stanley Park is fully reopened to the public as of today. Some of its trails had been closed for weeks because of aggressive coyote attacks. The fence used to keep people out of the park overnight will also come down. The park board says there's no longer a threat to the public and that 11 animals have been culled. Officials say they will now focus on educating the public and on not feeding the wildlife. Well, Squamish RCMP are warning people to stay clear of the Chief after another series of rockfalls. At around 1:30 yesterday morning, a massive rockfall sent shockwaves through Squamish. A second slide happened just before 5 in the afternoon near Angels Crest Trail. No injuries have been reported, but for now, there's no climbing allowed. Authorities are asking people to steer clear until they can figure out how stable the rock wall is. There have been at least 5 rock slides so far this year. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now. And Joe, I can't say I'm happy about it. The last full day of summer, right?
The last full day. It all comes to an end tomorrow. At least, though, Anita, it's not a dramatic end. I just have a few showers to get us through. And it was a gorgeous day. In fact, I want to take you to some of my favorite clouds dotting the sky today. The cirrocumulus, the high altitude, sort of puffy cumulus, colloquially known as the mackerel sky. They do almost look like fish scales from down below. They were stunning, sticking around for most of the day. The sky is thickening up, though. We've got a weakening cold front tracking towards us. It's bringing some steady rain to central and northern coastal sections. Oh, just saw a lightning strike up there north of Haida Gwaii. So it's an active system. Prince George, you've been getting a good soaker with this one. But as it slides down through the south coast tonight, it'll really lose its steam. So just taking you through that timing, overcast now for the next couple of hours. I think the showers, though, will hold off until sort of pre-dawn. You can see them just making their way down the island. Here's a snapshot of 6 a.m. So sort of filling in for Bowen Island, Howe Sound, down towards Victoria. I think it just a slight risk of maybe a couple millimeters tomorrow and through Metro Vancouver. So I'd be prepared with the rain gear, but it's not going to be a washout by any means. And here's a snapshot of tomorrow afternoon. Sunny breaks back. So we could be looking at the sunshine before the day is done, Anita, and the first full week of fall is looking looking pretty good. I think you're going to be happy with this one.
Well, I have to say, it felt like winter last night. I was covering the election and we were out in a parking lot all night. And I had a blanket, I had a wool jacket and a down jacket all bundled up.
Yeah, I saw pictures of behind the scenes, and then you will be ready for the overnight lows in this forecast, Anita. You've got this one.
You know it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Chinatown's Dr. Sun Yat-sen Classical Chinese Garden is kicking off the annual Mid-Autumn Festival.
Unfortunately, last year during COVID 2020, we didn't have any programming. So I think it's really exciting for our team right now to catch up and just be able to celebrate this.
Visitors to the Ming Dynasty-style garden will be treated to music, stargazing, and tasty treats. The yearly celebration of the harvest has a history that goes back more than 3,000 years. The festival runs until September 26th. Tickets are free or by donation. And thank you for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe. And if you're not already doing so, you can always watch our program live on our free app, CBC Gem. You can also catch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. With a result that was essentially a mirror image of the 2019 federal election, was it a vote nobody wanted? We put that question to Canadians coast to coast next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A Winnipeg designer is helping women keep their heads up during the pandemic. Her custom-made whimsical headbands have become a trend of their own in the past 2 years. She spoke to CBC Winnipeg about how it happened.
I mainly work with dead stock and remnant fabrics, so it feels like there's a little more sustainability that way. I take something that's forgotten and, you know, not much attention on it and make it into something quite beautiful. These are not the headbands for the timid. These are they're kind of an extension of me and my personality. So I do make some smaller pieces, but really my aesthetic is to be seen and is to be joyful and present, and they're like conversation pieces almost. It's like, where did you get that? Tell me a little bit more about why you did that. Why are you wearing that? Instagram was huge. Social media in general, especially because we were all in our homes and we found ourselves being able to connect with each other through social media. And when you have a small business and when you're an artist, you kind of need to be showcasing, showing up and showing your work. So social media has been incredible in the way that people would see what I made and they would purchase it, and then it would become a thing. Like, you'd want to put a pom-pom headband on. You'd want to have the makeup and the look and be ready for that Zoom meeting that you were dreading. And then people would take pictures and selfies of themselves and share them online on Instagram, and I would reshare. And it just became this kind of movement almost of women who were at home, but you still wanted to be seen. And it was just such a small accessory that could make you feel empowered in a tiny but amazing way. I plan to grow this in the best way that I can, in the most sustainable way that I can. If it can create more jobs here in Winnipeg, that would be so incredible. And there's only up from here.
Welcome back. We know votes are still being counted in some ridings, but we already know the Liberals will form a minority government. That outcome had lots of people asking, was it all worth it? Johanna Wagstaffe shows us how some voters are answering that question.
The election night train, it's already left the station and left some voters wondering if it was worth the ride in the first place.
I think it was a waste of time.
How come?
Because it's the same thing that it's what it was 5 minutes ago.
The day after the night before, it doesn't look very different. But for others, that's not the point.
It is during a pandemic, so that's a little tough. But I think people need to voice their opinions, voice who they believe should be in power and what they should stand for.
An exercise in democracy for some, an expensive exercise in futility for others.
I didn't even wait up for the results because I kind of knew what was going to happen.
Nothing has changed. Nothing.
I'm sure Canadians looking at these results say why.
But for a minority government, nothing ventured, nothing gained, says this expert.
All leaders of minority governments call elections when they think they can grow their vote. And Prime Minister Trudeau is no exception here. Look what's happened, Johanna, in the last 18 months. And for people to have the opportunity to listen to debate, to express their views, I actually think we need to consult voters more, not less.
The timing might make sense, but in the middle of a pandemic, it still didn't go over well for some.
I feel like the same. There was no change, so I feel like it was kind of an unnecessary election.
On the contrary, I feel that the election was necessary and that it demonstrates that a lot of work remains to be done.
A step forward or a step back. Either way, many say they'll just keep moving along, same way they did yesterday. Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Toronto.
For the minority Liberals, the task ahead is clear. Find a way to deliver on the party's promises. As Ashley Burke reports, their priorities could face potential bumps in the road.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
The Prime Minister headed out into the morning rush today, thanking voters in his Papineau riding just hours after giving his speech.
You are sending us back to work with a clear mandate to get Canada through this pandemic.
The party once again fell short of a majority, but the Liberals are putting a positive spin on it.
Prime Minister wins 3 consecutive government in Canada's history. That's a big win. Canadians have made a choice for the Liberal team to move forward.
Move forward on big campaign promises, like plans for $10 a day daycare, a new target to cut greenhouse gas emissions, and building 100,000 affordable housing units.
I think what Canadians are going to pay attention to the most is whether the rest of the provinces and territories are going to get on board with Mr. Trudeau for $10 a day childcare spaces, and whether they actually do take quick action on the housing crisis.
Trudeau has deals with 8 provinces and territories on childcare, but when it comes to other promises, there could be tension with premiers over issues like healthcare funding.
He knows very well that I want him to respect Quebec jurisdiction, so there's nothing new and nothing that was not said many times before.
Let's be clear, this was the most pointless election in Canada's history.
Just like before, Trudeau also will have to work with opposition parties to advance his agenda. The NDP says it's ready to cooperate.
If it's something that's going to help people out, make people's lives better, we will not hesitate to provide support to get things done.
Party leaders have another reason to work together. Campaigns are expensive, and right now parties don't have the money to run another one, let alone the political capital to trigger one. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
And the Greens are likely headed back to Ottawa with just 2 MPs, down from 3, one back in 2019. On Vancouver Island, typically a Green stronghold, it was a rough night. Tanya Fletcher on the challenges ahead for the party.
Certainly, I am disappointed. It is hard to lose. No one likes to lose.
Annamie Paul, who needed to win a seat in her own riding of Toronto Centre, didn't. In fact, she came in 4th place, and it set the stage for a dismal Green showing right across Canada. She only left the Toronto area a handful of times over the course of the campaign, including a last-minute visit to Vancouver Island just 2 days before voting day. It was her only trip to BC since taking over the leadership reins from Elizabeth May nearly 2 years ago. And since then, the party has been plagued with inner turmoil and criticism of its leadership.
Anname's leadership will come up for automatic review, and I don't want to be jumping out ahead of what the members decide they want to do. Clearly, there have been problems.
May was really the only Green to secure a decisive victory Monday night. The bright spot was the party's first time seeing a Green elected in Ontario. Mike Morris, who snagged Kitchener Centre, will now join May in Ottawa as the other half of their caucus. On the island, Nanaimo Ladysmith was one of the tightest BC races of the night. Green incumbent Paul Manley has all but conceded, though, even with thousands of ballots left to count still. A big criticism was the Greens not running candidates in more than 100 ridings countrywide.
We do have to do a lot of soul searching as a party as to where the preparations for the election fell so far short. We've had full slates, believe it or not. The Green Party of Canada has had a full slate every election since 2004. So something went very wrong.
Nationally, the Greens' share of the popular vote plunged to 2.3%, nearly 2/3 below what it was in the last election. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney made a key cabinet shuffle today. He's moving Tyler Shandro out as Minister of Health.
Your Honor, I ask the Honourable Jason Copping to step forward to take the oath as Minister of Health.
In a switch, Jason Copping, former Minister of Labour and Immigration, has been moved into the health portfolio, and Tyler Shandro takes over Copping's former job. The move comes as Alberta is grappling with a devastating fourth wave of COVID-19, and Kenney is under attack by members of his own party. It's plaguing online forums, a flood of misinformation and disinformation, and those peddling it are aggressive and hostile. Why moderators say they're burning out and scared. Next.
Her language wasn't always clean, and every politician was her favorite target. But she brought life to British Columbia politics, and she was one of this country's most colorful journalists. She was Margaret, better known as Ma Murray. She died last night at 95. Sheldon Turcotte has prepared this tribute.
Ma Murray continued to publish a newspaper until she was 85, and as long as her health permitted, she remained in the public eye. She received an honorary degree, and yet another honor she treasured above all.
It is a pretty little medal, isn't it? They call it Order of Canada. His Excellency went to pin it on, and I said, "Hold it, will you, Your Excellency?" And I looked him right in the eye. And I said, "Does it mean if I take this that you're going to clean up on me, and I've got to improve my grammar, and I got to watch my punctuation?" And I said, "Going to muzzle me?" Oh, he laughed quite heartily. And he said, "Oh, we'd never try to do that with you," he said. In the newspaper business, if you own a paper like I do, and you can write what you like, well, it's the self-expression that you get. Pardon?
Corporal Batiki here.
Oh, hello there, Corporal. I thought that was you, but I wasn't sure. This is the news office, and I heard about Ed Osterland wandering away or getting lost up there. Is it true that you found the body or found some scent of him?
Yes, we have found.
Margaret Ma Murray was born in Windy Ridge, Kansas, but as a young girl was caught by the lure of Canada's Northwest cattle country. She had a long career as a writer, editor, and publisher, primarily with the Bridge River Lillooet News, which she founded with her husband, George.
You know, when I was a youngster in Kansas, our mother brought us up, and she had 9 of us, and then she raised 2 neighbors' kids as well. And she always said, "You know, children, the world doesn't owe you anything, not a thing. Here you got the morning, you have the day. What more do you want this day? But the world does owe you a chance, the people in it. And if you can just get a chance, that's all you need. And if you don't make something of the chance, don't blame anybody else but yourself."
Ma Murray's homespun humor, her creative grammar, and a passion for justice endeared her to generations of Canadians. Sheldon Turcotte, CBC News.
here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I don't know, it's tough to say. It seems like it was already kind of like decided by the end, but I mean, figured I may as well just go anyway, made it so far.
That could very well be the last person to vote in Canada yesterday. He, like many students at UBC, had to wait nearly 4 hours to cast their ballot. Elections Canada is now apologizing for the wait and will look at how to fix the system going forward. Effective immediately, Vancouver Stanley Park is fully reopened to the public. This comes after a 2-week nighttime closure to cull aggressive coyotes. In total, 11 have now been killed. The park board will focus on teaching people not to feed the wildlife. And hospitals in BC's north are struggling to keep up with COVID patients. They're being flown away as far as Vancouver and Vancouver Island to get care because there isn't enough capacity. The Northern Health Authority is badly overstretched by high rates of positive cases due to lower vaccine levels there. And Peace River MLA Dan Davies says he's long been sounding the alarm about the COVID situation there and that it's growing dire. He spoke with our Isabel Regam earlier today about the health authority's challenges and how BC needs to step up to help.
Right now, we have an excess amount of COVID patients that are taxing our healthcare system, certainly locally. We've been hearing this now for the last few weeks, and it's really getting bad right now. I mean, our numbers up here in the north are 6 times that of the Coastal Health Authority. So it's dire. We got to get people out there. We got to get people vaccinated. I shared today there are multiple opportunities to get vaccinated, and we need to make sure that we do get people. We know it works. The numbers are there.
What are you hearing from people as to why they're not getting vaccinated? Because essentially that's a big part of the problem is the numbers are far lower than any other health region.
Yeah, well, there's a number. I mean, there is some vaccine hesitancy. We need to look at, over the past 20 months, there has been mixed messages coming from all levels of government, our provincial government as well. One day it's this, the next day it's another thing. And I think that has put a level of trust, some trust issues in some of the messaging. We need to be looking at, we've recruited many, healthcare professionals, nurses included, but they're not staying. They're cycling through. And we've got to look at why is that happening? We've heard lots of rumors about, toxic workplaces. We've heard lots of issues around, just lifestyle of nursing isn't, when a nurse is working 40 consecutive shifts, 12 hours a day, there's no quality of life there. And, so it's kind of this vicious cycle. We need to make huge changes. We need to have a huge, a plan moving forward. And it needs to be, with tangible goals that we can achieve and get this done immediately. Not talking 2 years from now. What can we do right now to get people on the ground to deal with this crisis that we're looking at right now? And I do thank the nurses that are out there, and I think it's important. They've done an unbelievable amount of work. And recently, just locally here, we've been hearing that, some of the healthcare professionals in our hospital, have been treated quite poorly by some people, and that's not on. It's not acceptable. They are doing the best they can with the resources that are available to them. So we need to have the minister make this his #1 priority right now.
Do you feel like he's not making that his #1 priority right now?
I guess we'll have to see, this announcement that came out just last week. We'll see what that looks like as it comes forward. I appreciate Minister Dix. I mean, we have conversations quite often. He is open to conversations, which is really important. But, I guess time will tell. One thing that we've been calling on the minister for is to do an audit, on Northern Health, on the hospitals. Are we doing the things the best that we can be? I mean, we had the Auditor General report from 2018, 9 recommendations there. Most of them have not been done. So there's things that need to be done. Unfortunately, we are in a crisis right now, and I think it's a little late to get the attention. It should have been done already. So I'm hopeful that we're pointing the ship in the right direction.
And as COVID cases continue to emerge and rise in some parts of the province and the country, There's another rampant threat, misinformation. Madeline Cummings tells us it's taken over online forums like Reddit, where moderators say it's become unmanageable.
As healthcare workers fight COVID-19, volunteer online moderators are on the front lines of the war on misinformation. This 32-year-old Edmonton man, whom CBC is not naming, spends hours sifting through conspiracy theories on the social media site Reddit. He moderates the Our Alberta community, which has 138,000 members. Before the pandemic, he says posts with misinformation were rare.
Now it is the vast majority of what we're doing. Our moderation queue went from probably maybe 1 or 2 of those a week to now dozens to hundreds every day. And it is unsustainable. We cannot keep up with that.
He removes posts and bans users for violating the rules. And in return, he receives regular death threats.
They forget that we're human. They don't care. So they'll just say, you should be lynched or you should be hung, that we're coming for you. It's only a matter of time. These kinds of things, at least once a week, more commonly several times a week.
Misinformation has also become a problem for Troy Pavlik, who moderates the Our Edmonton Reddit community.
It's very hard to hold in public your authority to moderate when the situation is changing so fast, when I frankly don't know as much as doctors, and yet I have to be on the front lines policing what is true and what is not.
Moderators fear that if they give up, misinformation could fill their forums and potentially have dire health consequences.
The more these wrong public health ideas are shared on social media, the more damage they're doing.
This expert says that as social media platforms have grown, so too has the scale of the problem.
They're going to have to downsize and in some cases break up. Otherwise, we're just not going to see any of this reduce, right, in any meaningful way.
Moderators have been asking Reddit to take action.
We shut down the subreddit for a day and a half, 2 days, with a message saying that this is why we're doing this. This is part of this wider protest of 100 or more other communities on Reddit we need something to change.
A Reddit spokesperson told me the company takes the issue extremely seriously. The company has quarantined communities linked to COVID-19 denialism and says its goal is reducing the burden on moderators. But moderators say more needs to be done, and they link the rise in misinformation to surging COVID cases in Alberta.
It is the key to why things are so bad right now, honestly. In my perspective, I put so much blame on misinformation for misleading so many people.
The way he sees it, misinformation has become a major public health risk, with no solution in sight. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
Well, do you feel like going to a baseball, hockey, or basketball game? Well, you better be vaccinated. But what about the players? The struggle to get athletes the jab. Next. At 6:42, you are looking at a live look at Cypress Mountain. Gorgeous weather on the last day of summer, and the early fall days are looking good too. How long will it last? Joe's got the answer next.
When you look in like micro shots of insects, there's so much color and texture and all of these amazing details, but at the same time, yeah, they're repulsive even though they're beautiful. You don't want them inside your house. Yet if one was to come alive, I burn the house down, I need to move out. My name is Domintha and I'm a ceramic artist based in London, Ontario. The type of work that I make is sculptural, and I combine various elements found in nature to create new biomorphic forms and creatures. So the first thing I do before I make anything is I draw a lot. I do some research and I print out pictures and I sketch stuff until I'm happy enough with an idea. And then I start by rolling out some clay into a flat slab, which I then put into the mold. Once that comes out, I assemble the top and the bottom parts together, and then I can start making the smaller details like the wings and the antennas. So sometimes I texture it as well. I will put little dots over parts of it to kind of create like this fuzzy texture. And then once everything is assembled, it goes into the first firing, which is the bisque firing. The parts that I plan on putting gold or mother of pearl, I put clear glaze on top of it. And then again, it goes back into the kiln for another firing, a glaze firing. After that's done, I apply my gold and my mother of pearl luster onto the areas that have clear glaze on them. And then it goes into the third and final firing. Like, big part of my work is the humanizing my pieces more, because even though they don't look anything like human, we recognize sort of emotions, or like the body language of the pieces says something. And so adding the like human names like Clive or Gord, I think that brings it even closer. Because for example, Clive, I think I get a lot of people telling me that he looks really shy because he sort of looks like he's hunched over and he's cradling himself. But yet he also looks terrifying, and he has these big teeth. It's a little like reality bending, because it's, you know, you're imagining that this weird creature that doesn't actually exist is going through like struggles like everybody else, and maybe he has anxiety and he doesn't like to, you know, talk to people or whatever. Again, like bringing it back to that balance of what, is it gonna hurt me or is it gonna hug me? I think my work is heavily based on escapism, so that's always a recurrent theme. So if you can immerse yourself in this beautiful, interesting, like fantasy world for a minute, and it makes you feel a little better, then I think I did my job.
The situation is growing more desperate on the Spanish island of La Palma off the northwest coast of Africa. Several small earthquakes have hit the area as rivers of lava flow from a volcano that first erupted on Sunday. The lava, that's as high as 6 meters, is flowing down the hillside, incinerating everything in its path. And there are warnings about toxic gas clouds and acid rain if it reaches the sea. Around 6,000 people have been forced to leave, and close to 200 homes have been destroyed. So far, there are no reports of deaths or injuries. And let's bring in Johanna Wagstaffe now, who is also a seismologist. And Joe, earthquakes in Spain, but also right now in Australia. What can you tell us about that?
That's right, Anita. Very much a developing story. Just in the past couple of hours, I want to show you magnitude 5.8, the location that it struck in southeastern Australia, so very near Melbourne. Mount Wood is the town that it struck, but feeling shaking for about 20 minutes from Melbourne all the way up to Sydney, and in fact getting reports of shaking in a radius of about 700 kilometers. This is not a part of the world that sees earthquakes very often. So far, no reports of injuries, but we are hearing reports of lots of building damage. That shaking, again, lasting about 20 seconds, fairly shallow earthquake, about 10 kilometers. It would be like getting an earthquake in the middle of the prairies in Canada. So relatively stable tectonic plate, but we do have uplift happening in Australia. So the unfolding of very ancient fault lines, but aftershocks likely. Again, this happened at about 9:15 a.m. local time. So we'll let you know if we hear more from the Southern Hemisphere. But I'm going to take you right now to the other hemisphere, where I only get to take this graphic out twice a year. The autumnal equinox is set to arrive 12:30 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. That's the moment when the sun's most direct rays pass through the equator towards the southern half. And yes, we're already seeing the shortening of the days, and we will continue, of course, until winter. But the cold front that's coming, as I mentioned earlier, really not ushering the season in with a bang. It's dissipating quickly as it heads towards us. I still think we'll see some showers tomorrow morning. It's already overcast across the south coast. This is not a huge rainmaker for us. And in fact, quite quickly, high pressure building back in for tomorrow afternoon, Thursday, Friday, right through the weekend. In fact, Now you can see that plume of moisture hitting Haida Gwaii north. That's going to be where the soggy weather sits for the rest of the week. And we will see some showers across the interior with this cold front tomorrow morning, increasing cloud for the Kootenays. Prince George pretty wet right now. You'll see the sun return tomorrow afternoon. So really most of the BC interior clearing out tomorrow afternoon for a pretty good looking full day of forecast for Thursday. We get to keep above seasonal temperatures through the end of the week into early next week. Even overnight lows, Anita, may mean that you might want to lose one day blanket, but keep it handy. Fall's around the corner.
I've always got one or even two handy. So while other people are losing their blankets, I'm usually piling more on. But this looks good. This looks good.
It does look good.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, starting tomorrow in Ontario, proof of vaccination will be required to enter a number of businesses like gyms and restaurants. But in some settings, this is already the norm. Jamie Strachan looks at how pro sports teams have been keeping fans safe and why some athletes say the policies don't go far enough.
For Toronto Blue Jay fans, attending a game in the midst of a pandemic means bringing more than their enthusiasm to the park.
I got my electronic ticket, I got my vaccination thing, I got my mask, I got an extra mask in my bag.
The Blue Jays are one of a growing number of Canadian teams requiring fans 12 and over to show proof of vaccination before entering.
I want everybody to be vaccinated that's going in, that I'm going to be sort of in contact with. I think the passports are very important.
In Ontario, the Jays and others have taken the lead, introducing this policy before a similar provincial mandate.
But the only way you're going to see a live game is by having proof of a vaccine, and get your vaccine.
Most CFL teams are also requiring proof of vaccination. So too will all 6 of Canada's NHL teams.
We wanted the best chance to have fans back in the building.
Dishes it down to Cody Eakin. Another rebound score!
Teams like the Winnipeg Jets say not only does the policy make public health sense, but it's what fans want.
Overwhelmingly, they shared with us that they wanted to see the people sitting back beside them double vaxxed. I think absolutely it is helping on the ticket sales front. People are looking for that extra comfort.
Experts say these policies were inevitable.
I don't think any of these teams want their game to be a super spreader event. I think they want to protect their fans. I think they want to protect the community.
South of the border, some teams have implemented similar policies, but many have not. The Buffalo Bills are one of only 2 NFL teams demanding that fans be vaccinated. As for the athletes, most leagues are not requiring them to get the shot. In tennis, there are some star players who haven't.
To me, that's a bit bizarre that fans have to be vaccinated and players are not. So I think that, in my opinion, it's inevitable that it will be mandated at some point, like other leagues are doing. I don't see the point of stalling it.
Golf to left field. It's
For fans in Canada, it's all about safety and getting back to cheering on their favorite teams in person. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
It's a 150-kilometer run for a cause. But the twist in this story is that one of the runners isn't much of a jogger.
Then
Fiona.
a fairly sizable kitchen with, kitchen sink by the back window, induction stove top, apartment-sized fridge, but, big enough with a good-sized freezer, and lots of counter space. So we created a new not-for-profit called 12 Neighbors Community, Inc., which is set up to own and operate and build this tiny home community and the social enterprise center. The idea is to help with what are some very acute needs in Fredericton and all of New Brunswick, as many communities are experiencing a rise in homelessness. In the back, we have our shower, toilet, and sink. The idea is to build a 96-unit tiny home community to really help create some new spaces, but more importantly, a social enterprise center which will help provide supports. The dining room section has a fold-down table that you can bring up to eat around, or fold down and just have it as a living area. I believe we'll probably be shocked as to the demand we would get, because people do want to live simply and affordably. I can already picture particular individuals that I'd love to hand a set of keys to. All summer, visiting people who are in various insecure housing conditions, including people living in tents. When some rooming houses closed, they ended up on the street, but they were paying rent every month. Since being on the street, that doesn't help with terms of addictions or mental health issues and all that. But when you meet them, you realize they're capable, they have skills. It's very cottagey feel, it's very dignified feeling, very clean. The anxiety of living on the street is very high. And the idea of giving someone a place that they can lock, that they don't have to go outside their room to access a shared bathroom or access a shared kitchen, but they have their own safety within them, I think is going to be really exciting. I can't wait for that day. And so that's the layout. It's fairly simple, but has everything anyone needs. I just happen to be lucky. I just happen to have a different set of circumstances. And when you hear everyone's story, you realize that someone didn't win the parent lottery, or didn't win the zip code lottery, or didn't win the education lottery, or didn't win any lottery, and some of us did. That's the only difference. But everything else, we're equally shared in dignity, we're equally shared in effort, in working hard, in talent. And so for me, it's just a joy that I get to do this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver's Anita Bathe at the virtual Surrey Fusion Festival, an online celebration of food, music, and culture featuring concerts, a cooking challenge, and more. Visit surreyfusionfestival.ca for more info. And don't miss Canoe Culture's Hokomo, a new exhibit at the Vancouver Maritime Museum that honors Indigenous maritime cultures of the past and present. Go to vanmaritime.com to learn more.
Two friends in Newfoundland will lace up their sneakers tomorrow for a 150-kilometer run to raise money for cancer research. As Jeremy Eaton reports, the long trek is dedicated to their friend who recently lost his battle against the disease.
For years, Charles Luther had wanted to do something to give back to those affected by cancer. During the pandemic, he came up with an idea.
That's the first thing that came to my mind. I wanted to run from St. John's to Trepassey, 147 kilometers and 3,600 meters of elevation, and wanted to raise money for Daffodil Place. There you go, buddy.
Luther called the endeavor running home. While he is no stranger to long runs, having completed a few ultra marathons, his partner Melvin Sutton, a little less so.
Charles asked me about it about 3 years ago, and I kept it in the back of my mind, and one night I just wrote him a message and asked him is he still interested, and he said he's 100%. So I said, okay, let's do something.
Are you a runner?
Not really, no.
But the two are dedicated and motivated, running about 100 kilometers a week.
My wife was supportive at 100%, just get training. If you're going to do it, be ready to do it, and which she's right, because you got to train for it.
Luther had planned this run in support of family and friends who've battled cancer. Then earlier this year, he lost a good buddy to multiple myeloma.
One of my close friends, a neighbor, Jamie Hines, he passed away this past June, and we're dedicating this run to Jamie, and we really miss him a lot. He has been one of our biggest supporters since I started this running home.
To date, the two have already raised more than $11,000, surpassing their 10 grand goal. The route is broken up into parts. They'll run about 60K the first day, around 50 the next, and end the journey with a 43-kilometer jaunt into Trepassey.
It is going to be emotional, just thinking about Jamie and those that were affected by cancer, and my wife and my kids and everyone that has supported us, my family and friends, and I'll be thinking about them a lot.
The pair plan to leave early Wednesday morning and aim to finish running home on Friday. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
You've been watching CBC Vancouver News at 6. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We're back tomorrow, same time. And Dan is here at 11 if you want more local news. Good night.